High-quality wool brings the best prices in the marketplace, but wool loses value if it is contaminated. Contaminants are costly to remove at the mill and may cause damage to machinery. Contamination in the domestic wool clip gives every U.S. sheep producer a bad image. All non-wool materials are contaminants. Contaminants can be placed into three major categories. They are either natural, acquired, or applied. The good news is most contaminants can be eliminated or removed at the farm or ranch. Natural impurities are produced by the sheep themselves. They include colored fibers, yolk staining or canary yellow staining, methylated and Kemp fibers, and hair. Colored and black fibers pose a problem since they cannot be dyed to the lighter shades necessary for light-colored fabrics. The threshold for white and pastel shades is about 4 colored fibers per ounce, which is extremely low, considering that 1 ounce of wool contains about 400,000 fibers. Black or brown colored fibers can result from natural pigmentation. Black-faced sheep and their crosses have colored fibers. To avoid contamination from colored wool, cull sheep with black spots. Carefully select replacement sheep and avoid cross-contamination that may occur from running colored sheep with your flock. Colored fibers can also result from staining. Not all urine, dung, and sweatlocks scour completely white. To minimize this problem, remove belly wool and skirt stained portions of the fleece from white-faced sheep at shearing time. Shearing prior to lambing is recommended to reduce wool contamination and improve reproductive efficiency. If shearing takes place after lambing, tag or crutch sheep to reduce the amount of stained wool. Due to the degree of confinement in most farm flock operations, these wools tend to be more heavily stained and therefore have higher colored fiber counts. Yolk and canary staining are also natural impurities. These stains do not scour white and can give a yellowish tinge to fabrics. Yellow staining can occur when periods of high atmospheric temperature and humidity follow a thorough wetting of the fleece. Also, overfeeding high-energy feeds during hot and humid weather adds to the heavy grease of yolk production. To prevent this type of staining, avoid overfeeding high-energy feeds and cull sheep with more than normal yellowing. Medullated and Kemp fibers are hollow or have empty spaces in the wool fibers. Because of these spaces, they have a different shade of color after dyeing and can cause streaks in fabric. Medullated and Kemp fibers are genetically determined, so select against sheep that have these types of fibers. Coarser wools tend to have more medullated fibers than finer wools. The top knot or pole area frequently contains high levels of medullated and Kemp fibers, so during shearing, place this wool with the locks, tags, and sweepings. Skirting hairy breeches is not effective in removing all medullated fibers in a fleece, so sheep with this characteristic should be culled from the flock. Hair is another naturally occurring impurity that does not dye or process like wool. Since hair is coarser than wool fibers, mill tolerance levels for hair are low. Sweep and clean shearing boards to reduce leg and face hair in fleece wool. While some contaminants are naturally occurring, others can be acquired from the environment. There are 3 major sources of acquired contaminants: vegetable, animal, and mineral. Vegetable matter contamination comes from many different sources. Sheep are exposed to hay chaff from overhead feeders and round bale feeders and from other sheep or livestock. Grass seeds, weed seeds, and burrs can become lodged in wool. If it is not practical to remove offending plants, then graze sheep in these areas before seeds or burrs are produced or after they have dislodged and fallen to the ground. Straw and other bedding can also stick to fleeces. To avoid contamination from straw, do not bed sheep immediately before shearing. Allow time for straw to dislodge from the fleece. If necessary, remove straw from the belly of each sheep prior to shearing. Sweep frequently during shearing and keep belly wool separate to reduce contamination. Also watch for twigs, bark, leaves, cactus needles, and spear grass. Skirt fleeces to remove areas high in contaminants. Other acquired contaminants come from farm animals such as llamas, goats, cattle, horses, and dogs. They shed hair and leave manure that can get on fleeces. Waste excreted by kids and external parasites can stain wool. Also avoid contamination from feathers and poultry manure, and watch for nests in open wool bags. Mineral contaminants such as dirt and soil are often hard to control. However, there are several things you can do. Constantly vary the location where you feed or bed sheep, and avoid bedding sheep in wind-blown areas. Try to reduce blowing soil in handling and shearing facilities, and eliminate drafts on the shearing floor. Use proper drainage and bedding to help eliminate mud, and select for denser fleeces to further reduce dirt penetration. Water in the form of snow, rain, and humidity is not a contaminant, but can cause a problem in wool. Wet wool leads to mildew, staining, and rotting. Wet sheep should not be sheared. The third category of contaminants are applied contaminants. These include paint brands, marking chalks, and medications. When considering the use of brands, remember that paint-free wool is preferable. Use ear tags, nose brands, earmarks, or electronic ID devices instead. If sheep must be branded, use scourable branding fluid, follow label directions, and avoid branding just prior to shearing. Use medium-sized paint brands and clean them before use. Be careful not to clump or glob the paint. These clumps often don't wash out during scouring. They break up upon carding and are spread through the entire lot of wool being processed. Also, don't heat the paint to boiling or add any products to scourable branding fluids, since this can make the product unscourable. Dewormers and other medications can sometimes stain wool, although few compounds today will cause stains. To avoid staining, be careful using medications, follow label directions, and observe withdrawal times. Polypropylene is a major contaminant. It is a critical problem that deserves special attention, and one with which wool mills are particularly concerned. It can fibrillate or shred into smaller pieces, thereby contaminating hundreds of yards of yarn or fabric. Polypropylene does not dye as wool does and leaves streaks in fabric. It is usually not detected until the fabric is finished. At that point, it must be removed or corrected by hand, which is very costly. Fabric contaminated with polypropylene that cannot be corrected has to be sold at a loss or even discarded. Poly is found in baling twine, tarps, feed bags, and used or torn wool packs. Contamination can occur at any time, before, during, or after shearing. Hay baling twine poses a problem because the tail end of the twine is discarded during the knotting process. The tails are left in the field or may be baled up with the next crop. As sheep walk, a static charge builds up which attracts the polypropylene to their legs. When the sheep bed down, the contaminant can then attach itself to the belly wool. Hay that is ground or processed without removing the poly twine can be a problem, since the twine can become lodged in the head and neck areas of the sheep. Sheep that ingest the twine may pass it through their digestive system, thereby polluting the feed yards, or the twine may cause digestive blockage, resulting in the sheep's death. Another common source of contamination is poly twine used for tying panels, latching gates, and temporary repairs. Polypropylene products that are not correctly disposed of break down and are blown with the wind. Discard worn and frayed poly tarps. Remove and collect poly twine from hay and poly feed sacks. Several steps can be taken to reduce the contamination in wool while shearing. Sweep frequently to clear away tags, manure, urine, and hair. Be alert for other contaminants such as cigarette filters, clothes, cans and cups, cotton string, poly feed bags, baling twine, rocks, tools, combs and cutters, and toys. While this contamination is not found in every wool clip, Mills do report finding these contaminants. Also, take a look at your wool packaging material. It could be a source of contamination. For this reason, use only new wool bags and packs and handle and store them carefully to avoid contaminating the wool contents. Sheep producers who are aware of the sources of contamination can take steps to eliminate it, improving the quality of their wool and the reputation of U.S. wool throughout the world.